Thank you all for coming. I think this certainly exceeds all of our expectations, the number of people who came to today's event that serves as a launching event for our new project at the Center for International and Regional Studies at Georgetown University in Qatar, titled America's Game in the Middle East, the 2027 Qatar Basketball World Cup. This is the fourth time that CIRS is doing a sports project. The first one was in 2017 and led to this publication, Sport, Politics and Society in the Middle East. The second one was launched in 2019 and led to this book publication in 2022 on football in the Middle East. And then for the FIFA World Cup, we had a project titled Qatar's World Cup Goals, moving from the periphery to the center. And this is leading to a special issue of the Journal of Arabian Studies and is going to be published soon. But what was also unique about the FIFA project is that apart from like a pure academic approach and working on a book special issue, we also worked on constant knowledge production, and we had a blog and a podcast, apart from many events like this one. Now some of you might ask themselves the question, why basketball? So there are many answers to this question. First of all, basketball is very important to Georgetown University. And before I forget, I would like to congratulate our main campus basketball women's team who qualified for the first time through the Big East Tournament's championship game at this weekend. Unfortunately, they lost, but this was really historic, first time in the history of the university. But basketball played a very important role for Georgetown to rise to national and international prominence. And this is mainly linked to the successes of the men's team and the national championship in 1984, but also to qualify to the Final Four a couple of times in the 1980s. So the successes of the men's team contributed to Georgetown rising to national and international prominence. But basketball was also very important to transform Georgetown University to a more diverse community. So until the 1960s, it was mainly male, white. And then Georgetown was one of the first colleges in 1972 recruiting a black coach for its college team. And basketball was used as a tool to better connect with a majority of with the majority population of Washington D.C., which is black. Then we are an American university in the Middle East, and when we look at American sports, it's the only one that spreads throughout the region. So when we also say North American sport, when we look at ice hockey, for example, there's one ice rink in Qatar. I haven't heard about lacrosse. Baseball, American football, very meager presence, but basketball truly globalized and became even the #1 sport in some countries of the region, as we will later discuss. Then it's the first Arab basketball World Cup. Has never been staged by an Arab country before. And this also shows that sport remains an important policy tool for Qatar. And this did not end with hosting the FIFA World Cup 2022. So the research question of our project is, what is the role of basketball for US engagement with the Middle East? And we want to study US, Middle Eastern engagements through the lens of basketball, but we just also want to simply look at the development of the game in the region. And the project which we are officially launching today has several pillars, and one of them is a lecture series, and this is the first event. And after in the FIFA project, we had a blog and a podcast. Now we have a vlog. A vlog is video interviews which are then also transcribed. And check out our website. When you put into Google America's Game in the Middle East, you find the project page and the first episodes of the vlog. And there's one conversation, for example, with Professor Emmett, his professor of history from main campus, who wrote a 3-volume book on the history of Georgetown. We're discussing the role basketball played in Georgetown's history. And for all the scholars in the room, I saw several colleagues from HBKU, from Northwestern, from Qatar University. We will also soon launch a call for paper to create a working group that is working on academic publications similar to those. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest speakers, and every one of them will make like an introduction of approximately 7 minutes. And I will introduce them before they speak. And I would like to start with our star guest, Yassin Ismail Musa. He is a general manager of the Qatari Basketball Federation's national men's teams and proud dad of 3 national team players. He was captain of the Qatari team that qualified in 2006 for the first time for a FIBA World Cup. Qatar lost every single match because you were injured. I think that was the reason. And also very important to emphasize is that Mr. Yassin won in 2014 the 3x3 World Championship. This happened a couple of years too early. In 2020, 3x3 basketball became an Olympic sport. So, but still, this is a remarkable achievement. And it would be great, since Qatar is now hosting the World Cup 2027, and many of us might not have much knowledge on basketball in Qatar, if you could give us a general introduction on basketball in Qatar for both men's and women's basketball, and tell us also how the Men's World Cup 2027 will change the sporting infrastructure of the country.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. My name is Yassin Ismail. I played basketball for Rayan Sports Class on Qatar national team for so long, since when I was 14 until I retired 2016. So I started basketball with back 90s, the basketball in Qatar was not as popular than soccer or football, you guys call it football. We are in a U.S. university, so...
I prefer football, but it's a U.S. university, so yeah.
Yeah, so I played so long in the Middle East, and I was the top scorer in the World Junior World Cup 1999, the head of the top scorer in the tournament. There was a lot of NBA players back then playing for U.S. national team, and Russia, Karanelko, if you guys remember, an NBA player, was there. Bal Gasol was there as well. So I have a long career here in Qatar basketball. And as Professor mentioned, I was the team that won the World Cup in 2014, 3x3 World Cup. And we were top from 2001 until 2010. We were top in Asia, top 3 national team. Lebanon, Qatar, China, and Korea was always competing for the three spots. So back in the day, the qualifier for the World Cup was true to you playing the Asia Championships. The top 3 teams in the tournament, they qualified immediately to the World Cup. So now we are in 2027, the new generation, they have a big chance the tournament, inshallah, the World Cup 2027 will be here in Qatar. First time in Arab country. So that will be a great chance for most of the young guys who are here. After this football World Cup, the basketball, I think and the Olympic, the basketball is maybe the third, the biggest tournament or event in the world. There will be a lot of NBA players. Maybe most of the fans, they go to US to watch a All-Star game. For example, 2 weeks back, I was in Indianapolis the weekend for the All-Star. My son was playing BWB, Basketball Without Borders. They selected one of the best in the world, born in 2006. So I had a chance to go there and watch. In the same time, there was the All-Star. So 24 players each team. The best in the world was playing that game. Maybe most of you guys, you know the All-Star game. The best players in NBA, they selected in East and West and play. The World Cup here in Qatar, inshallah, we're gonna see maybe the best 50 or 60 NBA players. They're gonna participate with their national teams. You know, the 12 of them, they're gonna play with the US national team. Then, as you guys know, there's 30% of international players in the league, in NBA league right now, you know. And in 1999 to 2000, I went there. I was in tryout and played summer league with some NBA teams, Dallas Mavericks, and I make a tryout with Indiana Pacers. Back in the day, there was only 3% when I went there out of 450. So we're talking about like 12 players, international, non-American was in the league. Now in 2024, 30%. You talk about like 110, 120 international. And most of them, they are not only 30%, but the quality 30 good players, you know. For example, if you see like the last 5 years, the MVP in NBA league was international. Last year was Joel Embiid, originally from Cameroon. And the 2 years before that was Jokic from Serbia, the MVP. I'm talking about the best, most valuable player in the league. And the 2 years before that was Giannis Antetokounmpo from Greece. So that's telling you that the international players, they're going up, the numbers going up, and they're competing, and that's going to tell us that we're going to watch a good World Cup in 2027 with a lot of NBA and a lot of NBA players. They're going to participate. So hopefully, you know, you guys, you're going to have a good chance to watch a big event, good experience for us as a federation, you know, to host and big event like World Cup. And at the same time, the fans they're going to have, especially not only the fans here in Qatar, but the whole Middle East fans, you know, it's a shortcut, you know. Last year was in, I think, Japan and Indonesia and Philippines. It's like 9 hours flight from here. No, we don't need to take a flight ticket, so just come with the tickets, and inshallah, the time is running, so 3 years from now, and hopefully you guys, you're going to have a chance to watch it. Thank you.
Can you just add, when we met last week, you told me that a women's league has been launched now. Could you add?
Yeah, as you know, the Middle East, the basketball in the Middle East is second, maybe, or third, the popular sports here in the Middle East, especially the Gulf country. So us as a basketball managers or organization, we try to put the women in women basketball in the league. So it's been growing the last couple of years. This year we just finished last week, a couple of days ago, the first league ever for the women. Perfect. So yeah, there was a lot of teams participate, and in Ramadan and maybe next week or 10 days we're going to do 3x3 too as well for the women. So it's an open tournament. Anybody can participate. They can make their own teams. As well, there's a club, they're going to participate as well. So we try to make the women basketball as well as involved beside the man, you know. And and at the same time, we used to have the best team for women for the GCC. Qatar was they win the couple champion back the last 10 years. So we try to bring the women basketball again, and hopefully they don't have to register the clubs. You know, if the women they want to play basketball, we do a lot of open tournaments, like open events, so they can. Especially the 3x3 is so easy to make a team. You know, yeah, 5-on-5 you need like 12 players, coaching staff. You know, but in 3x3, just every 4 girls they can put their own team. All they need is just a jersey, and contact us in QBF, Qatar Basketball Federation, and they're gonna play, you know, basketball, any category, you know, any age levels.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move to Professor Kozman. Claudia Kozman is an assistant professor for journalism at our neighbors, Northwestern University in Qatar. Before switching to academia, Claudia worked for 13 years as sports journalist, mainly in Lebanon, but also in Malaysia and the United States, with basketball being her main interest. Claudia, what can you tell us about the prominence of basketball in your home country, Lebanon? That was also my home for 12 years.
Yeah.
And of your experiences covering basketball as a sports journalist in Asia, but also in the United States with its unique role of college sports.
So first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to be part of this project because I love basketball. I started my career in basketball, and basketball also shaped my life in academia as well because of the influence and the opportunities that I got because of basketball. So, and also you can tell how much I'm happy because I have not prepared anything because I can just talk forever about this stuff. And then later on I'll tell you about TSC and what I know about him because we were at the same same age, same level when he was playing, and I was a journalist, and I probably interviewed him a lot too. Anyway, so I started my journalism career. I was only 18 years old in Lebanon, but that's where I'm from. Basketball in Lebanon is big for many reasons. Most likely, I think, Daniel, you would know much more about this because you do a lot about, politics and sports, but it's a sport that in general in a region or in lots of countries in the world, it's football that's number one. In Lebanon was not the case. And I would just think because of some of the issues that we had in the country, societal issues, and there's a lot of cleavage in the country. One of the things sports do that in general, one of the areas that people could come together and kind of, stand together against something else was basketball. And also because of the gender equality mainly in it. Football in Lebanon had a lot of class issues, and it was mainly about 99% male dominated. So in general, it would not be as common for girls to go and watch football. It was the opposite of basketball. Basketball, you would have at least half, if not more. And of course, it depends on some countries. And in lots of tournaments, different tournaments in a region, and by region, I mean sometimes it's the Arab Cup or the Arab Championship or the West Asian Championship, whether it's for clubs or for teams, the whole country, regardless of their political affiliation, which is also a big issue in sports in Lebanon. If I have time, maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of people would just come together regardless of who they support or their political or their sectarian belonging. So they would still come together and watch basketball and support the team. So if it's inside the country, then it's usually one team against each other, sometimes based on religion, most of the time based on sects. But when it's outside the country, it was always Lebanon against, or a Lebanese team against the other countries. So I started covering basketball in Lebanon. I started with newspapers, but I was also a magazine editor. I worked for magazines in Arabic, and then I switched to English. But I was also, I ended my career somehow in sports journalism in Lebanon for TV. I was a TV journalist. I was an anchor. I covered live events, but not as an analyst, just as a reporter. So that was my main career. And then I went to the United States to get my master's degree. And I got my master's degree based on a scholarship that I got from, I don't know how many of you know basketball or American, college basketball, it's a big thing. And it was from Dale Brown, who coached Louisiana State University. And Dale Brown was the coach of Shaq. Most of you probably know the name Shaquille O'Neal. And in college basketball in the United States, John Wooden would be the top. He's like the number one, the godfather of basketball. And then after him, you have a few, and Dale Brown was his mentee. He was his student, and that's the relationship they had. And I interviewed Dale Brown in Japan when I was covering the Asian Championship. It was, I think, 2000, 2001. I was interviewing him because I was representing Lebanese media there. I traveled with the Lebanese national team. So I've also, maybe I'll just say that I traveled a lot around the region with the Lebanese men's national team, with the women's team, with the women's and men's under 18 teams, with the club teams, several different tournaments in Asia, in Dubai, in Japan, in all of this region, also Tunisia for the Mediterranean Games. So when I interviewed him, he offered me a scholarship to do my master's. And that's how I started, and then it opened a lot of doors for me there. But one thing I noticed when I was there, because I had a bit more experience, I had already been working for 8 years in journalism when I was in the States. As a graduate student, they put me in charge of the LSU radio station. So I was kind of advising, there were 4 or 5 boys, 18-year-old, 19-year-old boys covering the teams. And what I noticed was they would put on their LSU shirts, the stuff that they sell at the universities here. They would put on their LSU shirts and go and cover the game. And then I said, excuse me, but this is not right. You can't, because you will give the impression of bias. And they said, well, what does that even mean? We are LSU students. I said, well, no, you can't, because what if you're interviewing the other person? The first thing in journalism is you cannot give the impression of bias, because the other teams would see you as someone who is biased against them. And they said, but the ESPN guy is wearing, one of the ESPN guys, I don't know who, at the time was from Baton Rouge, from LSU, and he was wearing their shirt. I said, well, I don't care if it's ESPN or anyone else. This is wrong, and you cannot. So I made them wear white shirts, and I became very unpopular because of that, because they thought, why would this woman from the Middle East, from Lebanon, come and tell us about basketball? What does she know? Anyway, I was also able to, I covered one NBA game when I was there. I interviewed Dwayne Wade, some of you again might know it, and some other players that have retired, and you don't know them now. But that was interesting. And then I came back to Lebanon, and then there were very big differences in how Lebanese people, Lebanese media cover sports. At the time, this was starting to pick up. So about 2003, this was 2005, 2006. Lebanese media, more people started to do sports, journalism. I also saw a lot of bias there. And again, it has to do with the religion and the political sect, or the political, sectarianism, which you identify with. This is how you cover sports. And the media reflect the country, the partisanship, and the whole level of all the parties that we have in the country. The media do it, also basketball does it, which means you have one team known to belong to this political party, and this team to this political party. What people don't know, and most likely Yassine would probably know, is that the most important person who picked up or who just funded basketball in the country owned one of the teams. But he also funded one of the teams, the biggest teams in the region. But he also funded all of the other teams that were their rival. People didn't know. They would see the green team and they would see the yellow team. And they were rivals, but behind the scenes, he would fund a lot of the other teams. And a lot of times it was also about alliance, just like politics work. One day you're with this team, then the other day you were with that team. The federation was also heavily politicized. It depends on who is in charge of the federation, who's the secretary general, who's the president, would also belong to different parties. And sometimes there was a type of a quota system where, for example, the president should be a Christian, but then maybe the general secretary would be Muslim, or would be Sunni Muslim or Shiite Muslim. These are the way Lebanese politics work, the same way the media work, and the same way sports work. One last thing is, I don't have any good stories to tell, as usually, I'd never covered war or anything that interesting. The only funny maybe experience I had was that when I was working, and the two teams that were rivals, there usually always a lot of just things thrown at the court. Sometimes they would stop the games, and they wouldn't allow even water to be in. And there was something, they were throwing rocks from outside, and then the gym is really, really tiny. It's not like you walk for miles to get to it. And then they evacuated everybody, and I was just sitting there, and I had the SWAT team, literally men in black with their whole gear, just come and save me. And I thought that was the only time I had something interesting happening in sports, in basketball. So happy to answer any questions. And we didn't like Yassine because he was so good. And and anytime Lebanon played Rayan or any of the Lebanese teams or Qatar, we're like, oh, he's that guy. Everybody just make sure that he was definitely the superstar of the country, and Rayan.
Thank you, Claudia. And to the students in the room, you can enroll for a sports journalism class with Professor Kozman. Last but not least, last but not least, Joseph John is a program editor at Al Jazeera English. He's also the editor of Geopolitico, a quiz on geopolitics, frequently with editions on sport, which you can find and subscribe to on substack.com. Before coming to Qatar, Joseph worked as a TV sports producer in his home country, India. As most of you know, 1 in 5 people who live in Qatar is from India. It's by far the largest nationality group in the country. So it's very relevant and important for us to know. Joseph, I mean, you grew up with cricket, I guess, but where is India in the world of basketball? And how does India compare with China? Both countries make up around 1/3 of the global population and are the most important growth markets for basketball.
Firstly, thank you for having me here. And I would begin by saying that India and China in basketball, they are a study in contrast. China is the world's biggest basketball market, both in terms of number of people playing the sport.
Is the micro on? Because we record this, yeah.
Yeah. So China is the biggest basketball market in terms of the number of people playing the game as well as the number of followers of the game. While India, I would say, is the world's largest potential untapped market in basketball. I'll talk more about China to begin with. In both countries, India and China, YMCA missionaries brought the game to the country in the 1890s. The YMCA, James Naismith, who invented basketball, was working for the YMCA. And so YMCA missionaries, as early as the 1890s, brought the game to both countries. But then China took to the game in a big way in the 1920s, 30s, with the Long March, Mao's Long March. During the Long March, so Mao's, the communist partisans, they used to play basketball, in fact, while taking breaks during the march. So it was popular even at the time. And interestingly, after the communist takeover in 1949, there was no purge in basketball. So the communists continued to promote the game. In fact, the People's Liberation Army regarded basketball as the best way to nurture cohesion in its ranks. The top basketball clubs in China were military army clubs. So China already had a very strong background in basketball before it opened up its economy in the 1980s. And now in the 1980s, once the economy is opened up, NBA saw an opportunity. NBA at the time, they didn't have much of a sense of the scale of China's market, but they knew that it was popular, and then they dipped their toe. In the late 80s, NBA entered into a TV deal. The NBA commissioner struck a TV deal with CCTV, now CGT, and the state broadcaster to broadcast basketball games in China. And so and then NBA realized that basketball was already tremendously popular in China. And by the 80s, if you look at the Asian level, China was already the top women's team. And when it came to the men, China had surpassed the Philippines, which was the predominant Asian power in basketball at the time. Philippines, of course, had a background of American colonialism, and so which made the basketball the most popular game there. So now you have a perfect situation for the NBA, and NBA capitalized on it. And in the 90s, NBA invested in a big way in China. And then in the early 2000s, by the early 2000s, NBA players had become massively popular in the country. And then, so you have Kobe Bryant, especially Kobe Bryant, who became so massively popular. In fact, even more popular than he was in the US. And even now, it's still Kobe is more popular than, say, LeBron James or contemporary basketball players in China. And then in the early 2000s, along with the popularity of NBA players, you had China had its first homegrown star in Yao Ming. So Yao Ming became big in the early 2000s. He was signed up by the Houston Rockets, and now you had a bona fide NBA star from China. And the popularity of NBA players, especially Kobe Bryant, coupled with Yao Ming's rise, exponentially raised the profile of the sport in China. I mean, if you look at C-dramas today, you see the lead protagonist, invariably you see the lead protagonist playing basketball. So it is undoubtedly the most popular game in China by a long way. And so China had its own professional basketball league in the mid-90s, and by the early 2000s, in 2004, NBA started playing preseason games between two NBA teams in China. So that became an annual fixture. So NBA has become phenomenally popular in China, which of course has also meant that NBA gets into political trouble once in a while. One of the NBA academies that the NBA opened was in Xinjiang, which they had to close down after criticism. Then similarly, there was this social media post by the Houston Rockets assistant manager in support of protesters in Hong Kong. He immediately deleted it, but the backlash was swift. So China stopped showing Houston Rockets games on TV, and NBA adopted a very conciliatory stance. In contrast to its forthright approach on, say, Black Lives Matter, NBA was treading very carefully on this issue, issuing very conciliatory statements. So, well, in short, basketball is a big deal in China. And now we come to India. In India, basketball has always been a niche activity. It's got pockets of influence in schools, universities, and some parts of India, Punjab, Kerala, Mumbai, Tamil Nadu. There are pockets of influence and some regional hubs here and there, but there's no comprehensive program towards excellence, towards global excellence, no aspiration towards global excellence. In the 70s, India has never qualified for the FIBA World Cup till date. It did make it for the 2018 3x3 World Cup. That was the first time India qualified for any World Cup as such. So in India, if you take up basketball, if you're really good at basketball, the avenues for the avenues for employment are public sector outlets. So the public sector outlets take top basketball players under their sports quota. So you have, if you are a top basketball player, you can get into, say, a public sector bank or Punjab Police or Kerala State Electricity Board, public sector. So you don't have a professional framework. So these jobs offer security, but they are not lucrative, and there is no space for professional advancement. So as the 2000s dawned, things began to open up slightly. So there was certain urban pockets had some exposure. NBA was now being shown on TV, and there was some exposure in certain urban pockets to basketball and to what was happening in the NBA. In the mid 2000s, there was India's all-time great woman basketball player, Geetu Anna Jose. So she was drafted by an Australian in the Australian Professional League, and in 2011 she was called for the WNBA trial. She didn't make it, but that was the maximum an Indian woman basketball player has made it to the NBA stage. And then NBA around the late 2000s, NBA saw that there was a market waiting to be tapped, and NBA opened an office in Mumbai in 2011. In the meantime, the Basketball Federation, the then head of the Basketball Federation, he struck a deal with one of India's top corporate outlets, Reliance and IMG, to train young basketball players as well as start a professional league. So there was movement towards professionalizing the sport as the 2010s dawned. And in 2014 saw India's biggest basketball upset victory. At the Asia Cup in Wuhan, India upset China in the group stage. That was a big deal. Biggest basketball achievement for India. And 2014, I would say, was India's top year in basketball. And the next year, in 2015, the NBA drafted a homegrown Indian player for the first time. So there was this big buzz about Satnam Singh, who was drafted to Dallas Mavericks. And then there was a Netflix documentary called 1 in a Billion at the time. So there was a lot of hope that there would be this one homegrown player who would help NBA crack the Indian market. But unfortunately, that was not to be. Satnam Singh never ended up starting for the Dallas Mavericks. And then it's been, it's been downhill for the most part since 2014, unfortunately. The Basketball Federation, they ended up having two factions vying for each claiming it was a real basketball federation. So they were fighting it out in 2015. So India's sports ministry had to de-recognize the Basketball Federation because they were fighting. So, and since then, it's been a story of decline since then. But NBA still has kept faith in the Indian market. NBA, they began an academy in New Delhi in 2017. And in 2019, there was a preseason game played for the preseason NBA game played for the first time in India. One of the teams, Sacramento Kings, that is part owned by a Mumbai-born businessman. So he brought the preseason to India in 2019. So there was some buzz about that. And the NBA still is looking at expanding in the Indian market. In 2021, NBA roped in a prominent Bollywood star as its brand ambassador, Ranveer Singh. And they have been, but then the thing is, it's an opportunity lost. In the 2010s, there was potential to start a professional basketball league. Other sports, for example, volleyball, football, kabaddi, they have started professional leagues on the line of the success of the IPL in cricket, but basketball unfortunately has failed to crack that. They have still failed to establish a professional league, which is setting back the sport in India. The NBA Academy has developed a handful of players who are now playing in US schools, but so far, nobody has made it big in the NBA, and India is still looking for the big homegrown player in the NBA. I think that'll make a big difference to India's fortunes.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. We have around 20 minutes time for questions. When you ask a question, please say whether you want to address it to Mr. Yassin, Claudia, or Joseph. Who would like to ask a first question?
Hi, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experiences. I'm also very interested in the sports industry, and my focus is mainly in the football section. And in football, we have this issue after major events where we have these stadiums which were built for those events, but now there's no use for them. Is that something that is an issue in the basketball industry as well? And if so, how does Qatar plan on tackling that after the World Cup? And I have a follow-up question on that. Is there any possibility to explore maybe the football stadiums that were built for the Football World Cup to be used for the Basketball World Cup as well? Because I've noticed that in US, for the big college games, sometimes for the Final Four, football stadiums are used for basketball games to manage big crowds. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a question from Mr. Yassin. Maybe we collect like a couple of questions. Who would like to ask next? Yeah, behind you. Can you give him?
Thank you. My question is also for Mr. Yassin. I'm curious to know, given that Qatar will be hosting the 2027 Basketball World Cup, what are some developments that we're going to be seeing over the next 3 years leading up to the Basketball World Cup. And infrastructurally, we know that Qatar has proven that it can do that, but more interested in learning about any sort of development politically or socio-economically that are going to happen in the country leading up to the games. Thank you.
Thank you. We could have one more question. Yep.
I actually have a number of questions, but I guess I'll go with one.
Thanks.
So yeah, I guess one of the questions I'm curious about is actually since the start of war in Ukraine and Russia, older national teams of Russia have been banned in a number of sports, in football, basketball, and any other Olympic sports and world sports. And I wonder, since Russia was also banned in FIBA and the Olympic qualifiers, how does this affect the world of sports if we set aside the politics? Since Russia has historically been a very good sports team nationally since like the Soviet times, even though it was comprised of a number of teams and players from like all the 15 countries. As we know, how does this affect the world of basketball and FIBA, especially in the 2027? And seeing that US did not really make it so far good in the last semester, basically in the, it was September, right? FIBA World Cup. They got the fourth place surprisingly for the first time in history, I assume, but losing to Canada. So that's it as of now. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hopefully the war will not last until 2027. That would be really sad. Yeah. Could you answer the first two questions?
Yes. Yeah, the both questions, they're almost similar, talking about the logistics and the arena stadium. In the big country with a big population like USA or China, they use the football stadium for some games. You know, if they have finals, they use it as they build the basketball. So for the fans, you know, or 50,000 seats. But here in Qatar, you know, we have 20,000 seats in Lusail, and sometimes it's not fitting back. We already have, so far we have like 3 arena stadium for the World Cup is ready now. And they will build 1 or 2 more for next 2 years. We have Lusail is one of the, you know, I've been a lot of stadium, a lot of arenas. The one in Lusail is perfect, you know, it's a 5-star arena. So from now to 2027, inshallah, we're going to see a lot of change. We see already, you know, we have a good experience in soccer, you know, after the World Cup, you know, the house the country is built the last 10 years, and, you know, we get the benefits now, you know, see all the stadiums, you know, just we can host any events now, you know. Maybe the next phase is, or next is the Olympics 2034, I think, or 38. So
first the Asian Games 2030.
Yeah, we have Asian Games as well in 2030 here, but we host already in Asian Games 2006. Yes, I was the captain for. We reached the final play against China, Yoming. With China, Qatar, you know, we lost the final, but was we beat Lebanon in, by the way, the quarterfinal.
I was here covering.
Yeah, you was here covering, yeah. So that was, and by the way, the last Asian Games in China a couple of months ago, we finished. We reached the 3x3 final. We finished second. We lost to Chinese Taipei, but we had a young team, you know. The average age was 18, I think, or 19. We have 17 years old and 18 and 19 years old. And as you guys know, the Asian Games is the 3x3 is under 23 participate for the just 3x3. But we're gonna see, inshallah, basketball and will grow, you know, even after the World Cup, you know. We'll grow and we'll get, inshallah, a lot of people, they will enjoy us and we want people to play basketball, want the young generation come, and play the game of basketball. It's a beautiful game. It's not like a football. Football, you have to have 2 teams, 5-on-5, 6-6, or 2-11-11. Basketball, you can play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3, anywhere, backyard. So hopefully, you guys, you can join us and play.
Thank you. Could you please all mute your phones? That would be great. As we just learned from you, it will be mainly in existing infrastructure and just 1 or 2 arenas are planned to build.
Yeah.
But I mean, today we have lots of excitement around this project and the Basketball World Cup. But when you look at the 2027 World Cup, do you think the arenas will be full for the matches? Do you think there will be lots of excitement in the country? And how to build this excitement?
Yeah, for sure. You're gonna, so you guys know, the World Cup basketball can play like 4 games in one arena, starting from early morning, 10 to 12, then another game, 2 to 4, then. But I believe that in maybe the first, even the football, we saw it here, some games, because they increased the numbers of the teams. Maybe the next one would be 42 teams. So we're going to see that a lot of teams in a lot of countries here. So for sure, those top basketball countries like USA and European games, they will be backed and full. Then later on, the final 16 and quarterfinal and final 4, we're going to see the 20,000 or 25,000 seats will be backed, But everywhere, even China, the World Cup in China, you're going to find, those early games, they will not going to be backed. But later on, when the knockout games start or the big games, we're going to see a lot of people coming from Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. They love basketball. Egypt, those close countries, and European as well, and Far East Asia fans, basketball fans, they will be here. And
yeah. Plus, it will be in September, so there's also a chance, for example, to bring school children to early morning matches. I know my son who's here, they were with their class to the Aquatics World Cup, for example, and also karate. So I think Qatar is also learning event by event how to build the excitement and to involve the community.
And I hope so they lock down the schools by that period. Football, they did it. I think that time we no school. The World Cup.
There was no school, but
there was no school.
September 2027, I assume there will be school.
Yeah, hopefully they do same thing for basketball, and the boys, they're gonna like it. The students, they're gonna like it. There's no school for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Just go watch basketball games.
Do we have more questions? Yeah. Yes, Mina. Yeah. Can somebody wait for the microphone? A student from a basketball country, Lebanon. Yeah.
So my question's for Claudia. I wanted to ask if ever, I know in Lebanon that the religious affiliation and political parties plays a large impact on everything in Lebanon, including, sports. So I wanted to ask if ever in your experience you witnessed someone who wasn't able to pursue a career in basketball because of the religious affiliation, or, does religious affiliation play a role in team selection for the national basketball team?
So that's a question for Professor Kozman. Do we have more questions so we can collect again? So Professor Swart, this microphone there, please. Yeah. In the corner here, yeah. Professor Swart from the Sport Management Program at HBKU.
Thank you. It's a related follow-up question in terms of the lead up to the Basketball World Cup. We spoke a little bit about, the growth of the women's game here. Maybe also if we can maybe just touch on the status of wheelchair basketball.
Mm-hmm. And behind you, we take this.
Thank you. Being from the United States, it's a pleasure to discuss basketball, so thank you for your time. I'm curious, in the lead-up and in the aftermath of the football soccer World Cup, there's a legacy project that Qatar has kind of pioneered. Is there any vision for a legacy project around the Basketball World Cup? Possibly a tag-along question to wheelchair basketball and women's empowerment. Thank you.
All right, Claudia, you want to start?
Yeah, a quick answer. No, when it comes to the national team, first of all, for the first part of your question, no, because we have both teams. We have for the Christian team and the Muslim team, you have different religions. So it has never been a problem because when players play, they just play and they want to win. It's never about religion at all when it comes to the team and the players themselves. But in general, it's more of the public. So most of the time, it's the fans that argue and fight, and it's never really the players. The players are best friends. They go out together all the time. So it's not an issue. It's never been. And also for the national team, how they choose them, it's also not a problem. They're never, again, as far as I know, they've never been chosen because of their religion, because you would get to know who the good players are and who aren't, and usually the coach in general chooses the players. So again, I don't know of any instance in the past few years that, ever since I started working, that that has been the case, so no.
Yeah. Jassi? Is there any legacy program planned? Maybe it's too early, but it's how can Qatar benefit after the World Cup from the World Cup? Is there the Supreme Committee had for the FIFA World Cup? They had this generation amazing, for example. They were building soccer pitches around the region. Is something like this discussed? Or?
No, of course, as you say, it's too early now, but that football, the 2022 was, just we get from the 2026 football is everything, So basketball is easy to host now. The basketball event, 3x3, in 5-on-5 is easier for us now because we get a great experience from, to host a football World Cup is huge. So when the basketball is coming, even when you took the file with the FIBA a year ago that we want to host, we're competing with the other countries. So, our file was so experienced, because the football helped us as well, so to us it'll be easy, for the country, for mostly, we have a lot of experience generation, that who worked in the football, so they're gonna help us, inshallah, and it's gonna be easy, things are gonna be easy. Yeah, the wheelchair basketball, I remember a couple of years ago, we hosted a South African wheelchair team was going to Olympic, I think, games, and we did with the Shafalla a couple of times, wheelchair tournament here, and we always try to make them involved. The big event, between the first half and second half, we do some 15-minute game between, when we play in the big events. So it's very important, and if there's a big numbers of the wheelchair users, maybe in the future we think to do tournaments for them as well. Maybe if there's 5 or 6 teams. So far, the numbers is a small number, it's not the big number. So we just try to make them to be involved with our events between first half and second half or before the game, and yeah.
So we have time for a last round of questions. The student in the back from.
Thank you so much. I have a question for Mr. Yassin. So for the Asian Cup and World Cup, Qatar organized a kind of event for all the social media influencers around the world. For example, I know a Chinese social media influencer who came all the way to Qatar to meet a lot of different influencers from different backgrounds and nationalities to discuss how to build a better global community in terms of the sport. Does Qatar have any vision in expanding this kind of activity into the field of basketball? If it is, like, how is it going to be organized differently compared to football? Because we know that basketball is not as popular as football in a lot of countries.
Yeah. Nikki? Yeah. So microphone here, please. Yeah.
So we talked about the economic incentive to increase basketball popularity in India, and I was wondering if there is a recognition of maybe there being a political incentive to doing so, or do you think Indian politics looks around just spearheading the dominance of what is already there, which is cricket, or is politically, are there parties that are involved, or is the government involved in doing so, if there is an incentive?
Thank you. One more question? Yeah.
I have a question for Claudia. So at the Football World Cup, we noticed that there was a lot of negative media coverage around the World Cup and Qatar hosting it. Is that something we can expect for the Basketball World Cup as well? And if so, how can Qatar deal with that better than what they did with the Football World Cup? Thank you.
Thank you. So, and I would ask also a question. What is the most positive change you are hoping for the Basketball World Cup brings to Qatar? Joseph, would you like to start answering the question? Yeah. Yeah.
Most sports federations in India tend to be led by politicians, a large proportion of them. And in basketball, what happened in 2015 was that one faction was linked to one political party, the other faction was linked to the other political party. And so they fought it out for who was legitimate, quote unquote. In what I've seen is in the past decade or so, despite the politics, in cricket or even for that matter, cricket, tennis, volleyball, many sports have thrived, and even despite the politics involved. And that's to do also with corporate involvement. There's more corporate funding. There's more visibility on TV. Unfortunately, that has not happened with basketball yet to the same degree as even volleyball, for that matter. Volleyball has a professional league in India, and it's got political problems with the federation, but the league is still going on. Hockey, for that matter, hockey as well, it's despite political conflicts at the federation, it's thriving relative to, say, 5 years ago. But basketball has remained stuck, unfortunately, and it can't be directly, there's a bit of a paralysis. It can't be entirely tied to political interference. There is paralysis in how the game is administered. In parallel, the NBA, as I said, NBA has an academy in Delhi, and they have been, and players who are trained there have moved to US schools. So far, nobody has really made it big, but in the near future, hopefully, somebody will.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Claudia?
So I'm in the process of studying that. So I just finished data collection for my World Cup project on how the media covered the World Cup before it happened. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a new tool, measurement conceptual tool, to theorize also how all of this works, how the media cover it. And my goal is to take that and beyond the World Cup, and now I'm going to test it. I start data collection for the Olympics just to see the differences. What is it about Qatar and what happened here? And most definitely and I already told Daniel, most definitely, hopefully for the Basketball World Cup as well. My guess is no, because what football means to the world and what basketball means, and most of it has to do with money. FIFA it's the richest because of all the money they make. So it's not going to be the same. So a lot of time when there's money involved, everybody's focusing on that. So again, I don't know, because unless I do the research, and maybe in 5 years ask me that question again, I would probably have an answer. But right now is we really don't know. But most likely, it's not going to be the same. So.
Yeah, there is a question about the social media and China. Yeah, for sure. You know, the social media and media is so important now for sports especially. And we just now start doing the committees. So there will be a big committee for the social media and media for the World Cup. And for sure, you know, China markets or media, or social media in China is important, you know. One of the biggest, you know, the fans in Asia and the world. You know, I remember when they was voting for Yao Ming 8 straight times All-Star, I think. Even he was ahead of a lot of stars when he was in NBA. So back in the day when they voting for All-Star, there was 50%, I think, fans that was voting. So China was like very strong voting. So for sure, you know, we need it. And the other question is for the most, as EGM, you know, national teams. You know, my part is a national team and the team. So for us, is the most important is to build a good, strong national team, and even, you know, can compete after the World Cup. You know, we have a young generation, and the World Cup is only 4 or 5 games. You know, but you know, after that, we want to use this opportunity, you know, to build a very strong national team, can compete Asia level, the top 3, the next 10, 15 years, you know. So that's what the target is now. For sure, you know, we want to compete in World Cup. It's not going to be easy, depends on the groups. You know, maybe we'll go group with US and Greece and Lithuania, Spain. So it's very. So in that case, you're going to play a couple games, and that's it. But for sure, you know, we want to. My goal as a manager, you know, is the benefits for me. You know, you have seen manager national team. I want to build. I want to take this opportunity and build a very strong team, that national team, you know, can compete along. Like when I was playing for national team, I played 19 years maybe. We win a lot of tournaments, but we were competing consistently every tournament, GCC, Arab, Asia. So that's what is the inshallah target, and thank you guys.
I think you have on your agenda now watching a match tonight, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, especially Ramadan, now we are late, we stay late, and the NBA time. NBA, you mean NBA, yeah? NBA games?
No, but you have a Qatari match tonight?
Tonight we. Yeah, 10 o'clock we have we have Asian Club Champion, they call it Wasl. My team, Rayan, they participate. Tonight we have a Asian Champions League like that, you know, just in football. We play against Kuwait team, Kadma, and 10 o'clock in Rayan. It's a crucial knockout game, so hopefully you guys, you can, if you have a time, you come support our team. 10 o'clock in Rayan, near Qatar Mall. So it's a crucial game. It's a very important game. You know, if you win, we go and continue. It's the best of 3. We lost the first game in Kuwait a couple of days ago, and we need to win this one.
Perfect. Yeah, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And America's Game in the Middle East, if you put that into Google, you find our project website and a recording of this event in a couple of weeks, our vlog, and soon a call for paper, which will be interesting, hopefully, for all the scholars here present. Thank you very much to all our speakers, and thank you all for coming. Yeah.